What is going on, guys? This is the Set It Off Network. I'm your host, Michael. It is January 23rd, day of our Lord 2025, and we are off to a great new year. I hope everybody out there is staying warm. I am here in Charleston, South Carolina, where it is snowed and frozen all over the South. I know a perfect time to take this opportunity to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Don't miss any of the stuff we're going to be talking about coming up. We have baseball season coming up, we got spring football coming up, and this is just the place for it. So if you like what you see, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. So today we're going to be talking about Brian Kelly and like what is 2025 going to look like for LSU football. I really believe this is the first year that there is realistic expectations and pressure on Brian Kelly, because I think the last couple years, they the real in depth fan knew that LSU probably doesn't have the rosters to compete with the elite of the elites in college football, right? But now you start seeing this 2025 roster take place, and now this is where the pressure starts getting ramped up, because LSU will have a top 10, top 5 roster in the country. You have a fifth year quarterback coming back. You have weapons on offense. You have the defensive staff that you've needed in their second year. You haven't lost anybody from that staff from the previous year for the first time in since probably 2019 that LSU hasn't filled different staff roles on the defensive side of the football. You have that continuity now, and I'm telling you guys this now, with all of these expectations comes a different type of pressure, because Ryan Kelly hasn't really felt that kind of pressure yet. Even when he was at Notre Dame, he never really felt that kind of pressure. That pressure where it's like, if you don't win, like, there's a real good chance, like, your tenure doesn't last much longer. And the pressure on Brian Kelly and the staff to get things right and to make LSU a contender, not just a team that wants to make the playoff, like a team that has the capabilities to win a national championship. That is what Brian Kelly came here to do. That's what LSU fans expect year in and year out. Whether the results show that or not over the last 5 years, but that's the LSU mindset. The mindset is we need to be in that top tier group of college football teams. And this year, I believe, is the first year under Brian Kelly that he is going to have the opportunity to showcase what he's made of and why he came here. Because he's going to have a real opportunity to win, a real chance to win this league, a real good chance to compete and make the playoff and do damage in the playoff. So there's a lot of things going for him. You probably have the Heisman Trophy favorite as your starting quarterback. So to say that he doesn't have the resources this year, barring injuries and stuff like that, would be, to say the least. And he is finally in 2025. He's brought in the portal guys. He's got the defensive staff. I think the offensive staff is really good still. And like I said, you have all the pieces that make up great teams. And if you go and look at teams that were very successful, this team has all of those components, and they're still putting things together, and only going to get better. So let's look at 2025 and what it means for Brian Kelly and what it means to LSU. Let's talk about Brian Kelly first. So obviously, with Notre Dame making the national championship, Brian Kelly has been the talk of the town, because everybody is comparing Marcus Freeman and Brian Kelly, and it's like comparing apples to bananas. They're not the same at all. The structure of college football has obviously changed. The dynamic at the university has changed since Brian Kelly has left. And you hear people talk about, well, Marcus Freeman's already done more than Brian Kelly in his first couple of years, and technically, you're right. You're absolutely right. He he won 3 playoff games, but you also have to have a little bit of context into how all of that worked out. Um, Marcus Freeman is a great coach. I love Marcus Freeman. I wanted him to come to LSU back in 2021 or whenever that whole cycle was, but it worked out perfect for him. He got the Notre Dame defensive coordinator job. Brian Kelly hired him, and then he ended up replacing Brian Kelly and kept that roster intact, which is one of the most important things in college football nowadays is retaining your own players. And Marcus Freeman is a football player's guy. Like he is a youthful guy. He relates to the players very well, being a former player. Um, and he has turned that Notre Dame program, you know, to continue the success that Brian Kelly had there. But to say that he's already doing better and more things than Brian Kelly is just it's just an uneducated take. And I get like the results on the field matter. Like LSU hasn't been as successful as Notre Dame since Brian Kelly has took over. Notre Dame has been way more successful in the grand scheme of things. Um, but there's a dynamic there that people always just seem to forget, and it is, like I said, I am not trying to discredit what Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame have done this year, because I would kill as an LSU fan to be in their shoes and have a chance to compete for a national championship. But the reality of the fact is they weren't ready. They weren't ready to be on that stage. They're not good enough. They're not good enough to be on that stage. I don't think they were a top 3 team in the postseason. They just got a very good draw, which with the new 12 team format and how the seeding and stuff works, it is clearly, after watching a test trial of this 12 team playoff, it is clear that favorable matchups will lead to skewed results. Um, I have no doubt in my mind that if Notre Dame was in the top half of that bracket and Ohio State was in the bottom of that bracket, that it probably doesn't end up that way. You had teams like Oregon, you had teams like Texas that I thought were significantly more talented, significantly better. But credit Notre Dame. They beat who was in front of them, and that included the SEC champs, and you can't discount that. No matter if they're missing their quarterback and a couple key players, like Notre Dame was beat up with injuries as well, so you can't really play that card. Um, I think it was a down year in the SEC. I think Georgia, without their quarterback, is a significantly, obviously, worse team than what we saw in the regular season. But like I said, you can't discount that. It's not comparing apples to apples. When Brian Kelly was at Notre Dame, he would make the playoff and go up against the 2012 Alabama team, which demolished everybody. Had first round picks all over that team. They were like the Monstars. That's like one of the better teams in college football history, let alone that particular season. And then you go to, I believe it was 2018 or 2020. I'm not 100% sure, but you go, I think he went 3 times. I believe he went 3 times and played Alabama in the national or in the semifinal, where he took on the one of the greatest offenses of all time, Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, Heisman Trophy winner, and that team went on to win a national championship. And then in 2018, they go and take on Trevor Lawrence, and that team goes on to win the national championship. So, Brian Kelly was fed a tough hand. And the reality was always that Notre Dame just didn't have the guys to compete with those type of teams. And Notre Dame still doesn't have the guys to compete with those types of teams. Because you look at who has the talent in college football, obviously Ohio State was the top of that list. But teams like Texas, teams like Oregon, and those teams, got the tougher draw for sure, and you didn't have to face those teams. You got to face the significantly lower tier playoff teams in Indiana, who never even sniffs a 4-team playoff. That's kind of my whole thing. It's like none of the teams in Notre Dame, including Notre Dame themselves, would have made a 4-team playoff. Like, never even been close. Penn State was just the third best team in the Big Ten. Like, they were never going to beat Ohio State. They were never going to beat Oregon. Like, clearly they weren't an elite team. They were a very good team, and they beat all the bad teams that they were supposed to beat, and that's why they're here. That's why they got there. So, they beat Penn State. They beat Indiana. They beat Georgia without their starting quarterback. Um, but, like, this is like I'm saying, like, it's like comparing apples to bananas. It's not. It really is coming off like I'm really hating on Notre Dame, and I'm not. I just want people to realize, like, that they're not the same thing. It is never going to be the same thing. Like, two truths can be had here. Like, Brian Kelly wanted to leave Notre Dame because of exactly what happened in the national championship, because he didn't have the guys that he felt were going to be able to compete with the elite rosters in college football. And until Notre Dame completely buys into that process and shows us that that's possible, it's going to be hard for them to believe that's ever going to happen. I'm not saying they can't win a national championship. I'm saying that it is going to be significantly tougher on Notre Dame than it is any other program that doesn't have the restrictions and the NIL funds and the stuff like that. It has to be a complete effort as far as the athletic department bought into winning a national championship, and I don't know if Notre Dame is there yet. I think they have a really good coach, and I think Marcus Freeman is a perfect guy for Notre Dame because he's not leaving Notre Dame for a better job. He is going to continue to grow and get better as a football coach, which is what you want. He's going to continue to dominate and get better players than people that are on his schedule. So you're consistently going to be in the playoffs, most likely, as Marcus Freeman has had that kind of talent. And so Brian Kelly said he wanted a new challenge, and the challenge at LSU is completely different than the challenge at Notre Dame. The challenge at LSU is the week in, week out grind of playing top-tier competition every single week. Like, LSU is going out there, and they're going to go play the best team in the country every year, right? Because this league is so good, it's so deep. And granted, the SEC was down this year, but the fact that you had 6 to 7 teams in the SEC that could beat anybody on any given day just proves how deep this league is. And I don't think the ACC, I don't think Notre Dame's schedule, I don't think even the Big Ten kind of schedule, when you get that deep into it, is a relative possibility, because the teams at the top of those leagues are going to continue to beat up on the bottom tier teams. And we saw it this year in the SEC that just wasn't the case. Like, you saw upsets all year long. And it made for extremely entertaining football, but the challenge at LSU is completely different than the challenge at Notre Dame. The challenge at LSU is you are not only here to compete for a national championship, you are here to win a national championship. Like, 3 head coaches before you have won national championships, and 2 of those coaches are not better football coaches than you are, right? You have the greatest of all time who started this thing, Nick Saban, won the national championship in 2003. You had Les Miles, who took over Nick Saban's team and did sort of the Marcus Freeman approach and took over, won a national championship in 2007, competed for one in 2011 with talented rosters. And then you had a guy like Coach O, who clearly had no clue what he was doing and got 2019 LSU to the greatest football season of all time. Like, so the pressure on Brian Kelly now, knowing in the back of his mind that those coaches did it, and I know he doesn't think those coaches are up to the caliber of winning that he has sustained throughout his career, other than Nick Saban. Like, he's got to look in the mirror and say, those 2 coaches are significantly worse than I am, and they won national championships. What are they going to do if I can't deliver? And I think Brian Kelly came here knowing that was the expectation, and he is going to go into 2025 knowing that is the expectation here. And there is no more free passes. There is no more, well, he doesn't have the guys, he doesn't have the staff. There's no more of that. It is all on you, big dog, and it all starts in the first weekend of September when you go to Clemson. You have probably the 2 best returning quarterbacks coming back to their teams in Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier. You have those 2 guys going up against each other, probably the 2 most experienced quarterbacks, talented quarterbacks, probably could easily go 1-2 quarterback wise in the draft next year. And then you have a big game right off the rip, and it is not changing anytime soon. Like, you are going to continue to play these big games. You're going to continue to. You can't lose. You cannot lose that first game, because you cannot set this fan base back and you cannot set this team back anymore with your week 1 performances. And if there is not a sense of urgency to this team about winning that first game, it is going to be another disappointing season, because that first game has come to be one of the most important games on your schedule every single year, and you are not delivering. And it doesn't get any easier. Clemson is a tough team. They're probably going to be a top 10 team. You're probably going to be a road underdog, because yes, you're going to Clemson, South Carolina to play in Clemson. It's not a neutral site game. There's none of that. It's going to be a raucous atmosphere. Clemson fans still care. Dabo Swinney is still one of the best coaches in college football. They are a good football team. They're going to be well coached, and they're going to be prepared. And it is on you, Brian Kelly, and this staff to have your team prepared, because we've seen it now 5 years in a row from different coaches, not just Brian Kelly, but this team has not looked prepared. And you have got your behinds whooped every single week 1 throughout the entire tenure of your run so far. And you have to fix that. You have to start the season better. There can't be a feeling out process. You got to know who your guys are week 1. There cannot be no warm-up. I know this is a 12-team playoff era, and there's tons of room for error now, and it can't happen. You cannot set yourself back like that week 1 and expect to be able to compete for a national championship, I think. So Brian Kelly and this staff have a ton of work to do in the spring to get these guys right, to show the people come 2025 that this year is going to be different. And like I said, all the pressure now is on Brian Kelly and the staff to get things right. A lot of pressure on Garrett Nussmeier. Everybody's going to be talking at SEC Media Days about how good he is, how good this team is going to be. The players are going to feel it. The fans are going to feel it. The coaching staff is going to feel it. That whole athletic department is going to feel the pressures of expectations now in 2025 for the first time. And I think LSU is going to be able to make something of it. I think they're going to be a playoff team. But like I said, all of that is going to come full circle, and we will get to find out sooner than later. Count down the days, guys, man. Football season is over. You know, we have our national championship, and now it's just looking forward to 2025 to see what happens. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, drop your comment. What are your expectations for 2025? And I will see you guys next time.